In the quietest hour of the day, the hour before dawn, when even the birds are unsure if it is yet time to stir, a breath of wind passes through the cedar groves of rural Kyushu. It brushes the moss-covered stones near the base of a small hill. It lingers momentarily on the surface of a stream, lifting the thinnest threads of mist that drift just above the water. And it presses gently against the worn wooden slats of a modest shelter, built not as a home, but as a place to pass through. Inside, a man opens his eyes. He is not startled awake. There is no alarm, no rooster's cry, no servant's whisper. Only the slow, quiet transition from one state of awareness to another, as fluid and natural as the changing of seasons. His name is Miyamoto Musashi, but names mean very little at this hour. He is simply a man, awake before the sun. He folds the futon without a sound. The motion is exact, neither rushed nor ceremonial. His hands, calloused from years of sword work, treat the cloth with quiet respect. Every movement has purpose even now, in solitude, when there is no one to impress and no eyes to watch. The hut around him is spare. A small shelf carved from raw cypress wood holds a clay bowl, a cup, a brush, and 2 scrolls, their contents unknown, but weathered at the edges from repeated handling. His swords rest in the corner, sheathed and untouched, angled carefully against the wall. Beside the door sits a bucket of water, drawn the night before from the stream. The surface is still, a thin skin of silence over its surface. Musashi kneels beside it and dips his hands into the cold. He does not flinch. He does not shake the water off. He lets it drip, slowly, down his fingers, back into the bucket. Then he brings a few handfuls to his face, washing in slow circles, not scrubbing, not rinsing, just touching the day. Outside, the mist has thickened. The sky is still dark, but pale light has begun to creep over the horizon. This is the hour Musashi favors most, when the world is half asleep and everything breathes just a little slower. He steps outside, barefoot, letting the earth receive him. The soles of his feet find the worn grooves in the ground, places he has stood before, again and again, like ink following the same brushstroke. He does not speak. He does not write. He does not meditate. His silence is enough. The birds begin, softly, uncertainly. A rustle of wings, the scrape of a branch, the sound of breath. Not his breath, the breath of the forest itself. Time passes differently here. There are no clocks, no bells, no calls to prayer. Only the steady, natural procession of the day, beginning, as all days do, with light. Musashi returns to the hut and lights a small fire with practiced ease. 2 flints struck together over dry bark, the kindling arranged the night before. The flames catch slowly. He waits. He always waits. A small iron pot is suspended over the flame. Into it he pours water. Then, from a wrapped cloth bundle, he adds a scoop of rice and slices of dried daikon, collected from a villager the week before. If he has miso, he adds it. If he doesn't, he does not long for it. He eats slowly, always slowly. Chopsticks move with care, never rushed, never idle. His gaze doesn't wander. He stares at the bowl, then the fire, then nothing. This is not a meal of indulgence. It is not nourishment for energy. It is a ritual of presence. To eat like this alone, without sound or distraction, it is to enter fully into the moment, to become part of the breath of the world. Outside, the fog begins to lift, shapes reemerge, rocks, distant rooftops, birds perched high on crooked trees. Most who speak of Musashi speak of battles, of the duels he fought, over 60 by some counts, always victorious, of the day he arrived late at Ganyuljima and still defeated Sasaki Kojiro, of the pair of wooden swords he carved from oars, fighting enemies on boats and bridges. But those are the stories told by men who crave conflict. Musashi was not one of them. He fought, yes, and he killed, often. But what he sought was not glory. It was something else, a kind of stillness, a clarity within the act. And to reach that, one must learn how to sit, how to breathe, how to listen to the rain without thought. The morning continues. Having eaten, he washes his bowl with water and a scrap of cloth, drying it with the sleeve of his robe. He replaces it on the shelf exactly where it was before. He checks his swords, not to polish them nor sharpen them, but simply to acknowledge them. His blades are not trophies. They are tools, extensions of intention. They are never far from his body, but never drawn without reason. He sets them aside again. And then he steps back outside. This time he walks further, into the forest, along a narrow path that descends toward the stream, then winds up again into a grove of tall, narrow trees, the kind that sings softly when the wind weaves between them. He does not carry a sword. He does not wear armor. He does not need either. Somewhere, a woodpecker drums at a tree. Somewhere, a deer flicks its ear. Musashi kneels beside a stone outcropping, one he has sat beside many times before. The stone is cool and damp. A patch of moss grows near its base, bright green. He does nothing here. He does not meditate. He does not train. He simply sits. To some, this would seem pointless, but to Musashi, this is the sharpening of a blade that cannot be seen, a clearing of thought, a smoothing of inner turbulence, a conversation with the world held entirely in silence. By the time he returns to the hut, the sun has fully risen, the mist has burned away, and with it, the last of night's quiet dreams. Birds now chatter openly. The stream gurgles cheerfully over rocks. A butterfly dances near the door, oblivious to the gravity of the man within. Musashi enters the hut again, and this time he takes up a brush, not a sword, a brush. He unrolls a sheet of rice paper, dips the tip of the bamboo stalk into a small ceramic ink dish, and begins to paint. Not quickly, not with flourish, with presence. A single black line curves across the page. Another follows. Then a dot. Then a pause. Then nothing. Sometimes he paints animals. Turtles, hawks, or fish. Sometimes a mountain, a wave, a pine tree shaped by wind. But the subject never matters. The painting is not the goal. The act is the goal. He may pause halfway, he may finish, or he may set the paper aside to dry, never to be seen again. In his later years, Musashi would write that the way of the sword and the way of the brush are the same. To commit one's whole self to a single moment, to move without hesitation, yet without haste, to express clarity through motion. In this way, his morning is complete, not because he has achieved something, but because he has fully inhabited it. He has eaten without distraction, trained without ego, sat without urgency, painted without purpose. And in doing so, he has aligned himself once again with the flow of the world. The sun is higher now, though not yet overhead. A warm gold filters through the trees, casting long shadows across the forest floor. Each shadow stretches slowly like an old memory. Musashi walks toward a clearing. He has been here many times before. He has walked this path in spring when flowers push up from the ground. He has walked it in snow when all sound disappears. He walks it today with no urgency, because practice for him is not a task. It is not a duty. It is simply the next breath, the next step, the next motion. He reaches the clearing, a modest patch of earth ringed by trees. No shrine, no markers, no signs of what has come before. And yet, in the center of this empty space lies a long, smooth wooden branch. Worn, scarred, familiar. It is a bokken, a wooden sword. Musashi lifts it slowly, not with reverence, but with presence. It is a piece of wood, but in his hands, it is an extension of breath. He does not speak. He does not bow. He simply stands, breathes, and begins. The first movement is nothing more than a step forward. The second, a diagonal cut through empty air. Then pause. Then again. A cut. Then another. Each strike is clean without flourish. Each motion is born from the last, a ripple in still water. He moves as though he is not thinking, and in truth he is not. Thinking is too slow. It interrupts. He is only present. His feet shift on the ground. He steps left, then right, adjusts posture, checks balance. He repeats the same cut again and again and again. This is the core of his way. Repetition without boredom. Most men tire of doing the same thing. They want variety, excitement, novelty. But Musashi found something else inside repetition: clarity. Each time he swings the sword, he learns something new, not about his enemy, but about himself. He notices how his shoulder shifts when it shouldn't, how his wrist tenses, how his breath stops just before the strike. So he tries again and again, until the motion no longer needs correction, until the motion is simply motion, no more, no less. He trains without a partner, not because there are none to train with, but because the enemy he trains to defeat is internal. Fear, ego, expectation, distraction. A duel may last minutes. A practice like this lasts a lifetime. In the Book of Five Rings, Musashi wrote, "You must understand that there is more than one path to the top of the mountain." And this stillness, this repetition, this daily ritual in a forgotten forest, this is his path. It is not spectacular. It is not praised. No one applauds. No one watches. And yet, in this quiet field surrounded by trees and sky, Musashi carves his skill into his own body, not to impress, not to conquer, but to understand. He continues, Now the forms change slightly. He switches to a two-handed grip, his signature, the Niten Ichi Ryu style. One sword in each hand, a long sword and a short, only now both wooden, both balanced. He does not strike wildly. He moves as if testing the weight of silence. Left hand swings, right hand parries, step, pivot, thrust, then stillness. He holds the posture, not to look good, but to feel where the energy settles, to know what stillness feels like inside the shape of a cut. This was never about killing. Musashi learned long ago that violence was easy. To swing with rage, to fight with force, that path was always available. But to move without thought, to act with no desire to win, to empty the self completely before the strike, that was the true discipline. And discipline, he believed, was the only path to freedom. He pauses, lowers both wooden swords, breathes deeply, once, then again. His chest rises and falls slowly. Then, with no ceremony, he sits, cross-legged, in the middle of the clearing. He places the bokken beside him like a companion, not a tool, not a symbol, just something that has walked beside him for many years. There are no medals here, no tournaments, no enemies, no history books, only trees and wind, and a man who has chosen to walk this path alone. Somewhere far away, on the edge of the forest, a farmer lifts a basket of straw. A child plays in a stream, unaware that one of the greatest swordsmen in history breathes calmly nearby. A hawk circles above, and Musashi remains still. He returns the wooden swords to the foot of a tree. He does not carry them back. They are part of this place now, part of the practice, part of the earth. And as he walks away, he does not look back, because he knows he will return, tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after that, not for the sword, but for the clarity. There is a stillness that comes after motion. The forest is quiet once more. The sword rests again. The sweat has dried. And now, in that stillness, a new form of practice begins. Musashi kneels beside a low wooden desk, no more than a slab of pine laid across two stones. Light from the open doorway of his hut spills across the floor, illuminating a small scroll, gently unrolled. Atop the scroll, a circle of ink already dried. Beside it, a blank space, waiting. He picks up the brush, not the sword. The ink is ground each morning, a slow circular motion of stone on stone. He does not rush it. The sound of the ink being prepared is soft, like two branches rubbing gently in the wind. It is said that Musashi, late in life, would paint not for fame, but for clarity. He painted the shell of a turtle, the stillness of a carp beneath the surface of a pond. But what he was truly painting was not the object itself, it was its essence. Not what the eye sees, but what the heart understands. The brush moves now, slow, deliberate, a curved line forming the back of a bird, a single stroke, tapering towards silence. Then pause. Not every painting requires more than one stroke. Some are complete before they begin. Musashi understood this because he knew that in both sword and brush, the mark you leave behind is permanent. It cannot be corrected. It must be true. To paint poorly is not to fail, but to reveal. And the greatest lesson is to see your own mind in the line you leave. He lifts the brush, sets it down, pours warm tea from a ceramic pot, its glaze chipped at the edges, but clean. The tea is bitter. He drinks it slowly. Steam curls into the air and disappears. He watches the ink dry. Outside, the wind shifts. Clouds drift across the sun. A crow calls, then is quiet again. Musashi was not a trained painter. He was not a professional calligrapher, and yet his works survive centuries later because they were not performances. They were not made to impress. They were made because something inside needed to be expressed, not in words, not in motion, but in stillness. It is tempting to believe that great warriors must be hardened men, cold, stoic, without sentiment. But Musashi painted birds. He wrote poems. He carried a flute. He believed that a warrior who does not know art cannot know himself. He once wrote, "When you know the way broadly, you see it in all things." The same discipline that steadied his sword steadied his brush. The same presence that allowed him to strike without hesitation allowed him to paint a mountain with a single stroke. He paints again. This time, a pine tree. Its trunk bends to the right, shaped by years of wind. 3 needles fall from a branch. He does not paint them, but imagines them. He knows their absence is part of the composition. He smiles, not because it is perfect, but because it is honest. The ink dries quickly in the afternoon sun. Beside his desk is a short scroll, already unfurled. Its calligraphy is uneven, slightly slanted, not decorative, not ornamental, but clear. Musashi reads it again, though he knows it by heart. It is not a poem, it is a reminder. Think lightly of yourself and deeply of the world. Respect Buddha and the gods without counting on their help. Do not let yourself be guided by the feeling of lust or love. Resentment and complaint are appropriate neither for oneself nor others. Accept everything just the way it is. These were his truths. Not commandments, not philosophies for others, but notes to the self, scraps of the path he had carved alone. He places his brush down, drinks another cup of tea, and sits in silence. There is no goal here. He does not intend to become an artist. He does not exhibit his paintings, but he paints because the brush teaches him what the blade cannot. It teaches patience, it teaches surrender, and it teaches the value of space, the importance of what is not drawn. The day continues. Outside, a child laughs in the distance. Somewhere, a villager tends to a fire. Musashi does not stir. He opens a new scroll, dips the brush, begins again. This time, a carp. He starts with the eye, a single black dot, then the curve of the back, then the tail, swift and sharp. His hand moves without hesitation, not because he knows what will come next, but because he does not need to. He trusts the motion, just as he trusted the motion of a cut in battle. Just as he trusted the swing of an oar through river water, just as he trusted the wind to carry a hawk across the valley. He sets down the brush again, looks at the page, says nothing. But in his stillness, something radiates. Not pride, not ego, something like peace. In the years to come, many would seek to learn Musashi's way. They would imitate his sword form, memorize his tactics, quote his writings. But few would sit in silence beside a paper scroll. Few would grind ink slowly, draw a bird with no name, and be content to leave it unseen. Because to walk the true path is not to follow footsteps, but to listen for the rhythm beneath them. And that rhythm, for Musashi, was the stroke of a brush, as much as the strike of a sword. The road is long, and most of it is quiet. Musashi walks slowly along a dirt path, worn down by generations of feet and carts. It cuts through fields of tall grass and scattered trees, meandering like a river, unconcerned with its destination. He does not count the miles. He does not mark the hours. The journey itself is enough. He walks not to arrive, but to walk. And though he chooses solitude, solitude does not always remain, because the road brings encounters. The first was a monk, an old man in a straw hat, sitting beside a crumbling stone wall. He had been watching the road, though perhaps not for anyone in particular. Musashi passed quietly, saying nothing. But the monk raised his hand in greeting. "You walk like a man with no destination," he said. Musashi stopped, bowed slightly, said nothing. The monk motioned to a pot of tea, steaming beside a fire made of gathered twigs. "Sit, if your legs are tired. I have more cups than friends these days." Musashi sat. No words followed for a while, only the soft pour of tea into ceramic, the clink of a cup set gently on a flat stone, the slow sips of two men at peace. The monk asked no questions. He did not mention swords, did not ask for stories. He simply sipped and stared toward the setting sun. Musashi did the same. When the tea was gone, they bowed to each other, and Musashi continued walking. He would never see the monk again. But the warmth of the tea and the silence between them remained with him for many days. Another time, in a mountain village with no name, Musashi stopped to trade for food. A few coins, given in exchange for rice wrapped in cloth and a handful of dried plums. He bowed to the old woman who handed it to him, and as he turned to go, he saw a child, no more than 6, peeking at him from behind a tree. She watched with wide eyes, unblinking. Musashi paused, met her gaze, then bowed to her as well, a deep, formal bow, as one would give a master. The child froze, then bowed back, awkwardly, with small arms and unsure posture. She grinned. Musashi smiled softly, almost imperceptibly, then walked on. He did not often stay in one place, but on one journey, heavy rains forced him to take shelter beneath the eaves of a small shrine. He stood there for hours, the downpour endless, beating rhythmically on the wooden roof. An old man, hunched and slow, came to sit beside him, without speaking. He carried a long, narrow parcel, wrapped in silk and tied with cord. They waited together. Eventually, the old man untied the parcel and revealed a bamboo flute. "I carved it myself," he said. "Not well, but I made it." He held it out to Musashi. "You carry swords, I carry air. Neither of us is wrong." Musashi accepted the flute with both hands, as one would accept a sword from a master. He tucked it into the sash at his waist. The rain stopped. They bowed, and Musashi continued on, flute tapping lightly against his hip. He never played the flute well, but sometimes at dusk he would lift it to his lips, let the breath move through it, not as music, but as offering. The sound would waver, broken, incomplete, but it echoed gently in the trees, and that was enough. In another village, children followed him from a distance, curious, laughing, pretending to carry swords of their own, made from sticks, mimicking stances they imagined from tales. He did not stop them. He walked as he always did, measured and soft, until they tired and turned away. But before they left, one boy ran ahead and dropped a small stone at Musashi's feet, smooth, flat, and painted with a single red dot. "For luck," the boy whispered, then ran off. Musashi picked it up, turning it in his fingers. He kept it for years, not because he believed in luck, but because the gesture had weight. These moments were not frequent. Days passed between them, days of walking, of eating alone, practicing sword forms under silent trees. But the road had its rhythm, and part of that rhythm was contact. Not deep, not lasting, but real. The shopkeeper who overfilled his bowl, the farmer who lent him a straw hat during a storm, the traveler who walked beside him for 10 minutes, said nothing, then turned onto a different path. Each left nothing behind, except a feeling like the echo of a bell. Musashi never sought companions, but he never rejected them, because he understood, as all wanderers do, that even brief contact is sacred, and that a wordless tea beneath a tree can stay with you longer than the sound of clashing steel. He once wrote in a scroll, "Perceive that which cannot be seen with the eye." He was speaking of combat, but he could have been speaking of connection. The brush of presence, the trace of kindness, the softness of being witnessed, even for a moment. One evening, as twilight deepened, Musashi passed a weaver's house on the edge of a village. A woman stood outside, hanging dyed cloth to dry. She looked up. Their eyes met. She said nothing. Neither did he. But the cloth waved between them like a banner, and for that moment both were still. Not every encounter became memory. Many passed like leaves on water. A nod, a shared fire, a bowl of soup handed over a low wall. But each one softened the edges of solitude, and reminded Musashi that even a path walked alone touches many other feet. Wind has spent its fury, and the world breathes slower, as if remembering how. The sky remains gray, but no longer threatens. The leaves glisten with quiet apology, and Musashi walks once more, staff in hand, step by step, pressing forward on a road that remembers his feet. This is not a story of destination. There is no castle at the end of this path, no duel, no great meeting, only the sound of his own footsteps and the soft rhythm of water trickling through moss. It had been raining for 4 days. At first it came as a gentle drizzle, a companionable presence, light enough to ignore. But then the sky darkened and the wind turned, the roads thickened with mud. His straw cloak clung heavy to his back, and the trail disappeared into mist. Still, Musashi did not stop, because walking is not always for reaching. Sometimes it is simply for being. He walked through cedar groves, their high canopy breaking the rain into soft drops that fell like whispers. He passed flooded rice fields where frogs sang in chorus, each note blending into a lullaby older than memory. He crossed creaking bridges, swollen with river water, the wood groaning beneath his feet. And he kept going. Once, during the heaviest rainfall, he took shelter beneath a large boulder. It leaned naturally, forming a dry alcove just large enough for him to sit. He unslung his pack, removed his sandals. Steam rose from his soaked clothing. He made no fire, he ate no food. He simply sat and listened. The rain became a language, not of words, but of rhythms, of tempos. It danced on leaves, it drummed on bark, it hissed against the ground like breath drawn between teeth. Musashi closed his eyes, let the sound become thought, let thought become stillness. He had always walked, even in his youth, even when his name had yet to mean anything, even when he still fought for praise or purpose or pride. Walking had been there, unglorified, unnoticed. Now it was his teacher. He knew the feel of every kind of path. The crunch of frost beneath sandals in early winter, the squelch of spring roads not yet dried, the cracked clay of summer trails, split like ancient scrolls. Each one shaped his gait, his patience, his breath. A swordsman measures the world through motion, and Musashi had learned to measure not through speed or distance, but awareness. Rain teaches patience. You cannot outpace it. You cannot resist it. You must allow it to fall, and fall, and fall. Only then does the world change shape. In a small valley carved by wind, he found a stone marker, half covered in moss, its writing almost gone. Someone long ago had carved a single word, Coco, here, just here. A word with no boast, no claim. A simple note that someone else long before had stood on this same ground. He touched the stone, bowed slightly, and moved on. By the fifth day, the rain had lightened. His path curved through a forest thick with bamboo. Each stalk swayed gently, ticking against its neighbor, 1,000 quiet metronomes, measuring time not in minutes, but in presence. Insects hummed, birds newly awakened called to each other in hesitant song. Musashi walked slowly now, not out of fatigue, but reverence. To walk in rain is to remember how small one is. To be surrounded by falling sky, endless, soft, insistent, is to lose the illusion of importance. He did not hate the feeling. On the contrary, he welcomed it, because when ego falls away, what remains is clearer. Breath, step, sight. No more, no less. At noon, the sun threatened to emerge. Not fully, just a dim glow through shifting clouds. But the light was enough to cast shadows again. He removed his straw hat, let the mist settle into his hair, and paused to eat. Rice, slightly damp, pickled plum, water from a stream. He sat cross-legged on a flat rock, hands clean, movements deliberate. Each bite was slow, each swallow mindful. There was no rush, there was no schedule. There was only this moment, as quiet as breath. After eating, he retrieved the bamboo flute, the one given to him by the old man in Chapter 4. He played a single note, then another, wavering, imperfect. But the trees did not mind, nor did the birds, nor the path. And for a while the sound drifted upward, mixing with cloud. He did not walk quickly that afternoon. He paused often to examine the marks of deer in soft mud. to watch a millipede curl into a circle at his passing, to notice the smell of fresh earth drawn up by the rain. He traced a fallen leaf with his finger, noting the network of veins that mirrored rivers he'd once crossed. He watched a spider repair its web with meticulous care, thread by thread. These were not acts of idleness, they were practice, not with sword or form, but with presence. To see, to truly see, to bear witness to the world without needing to name it, fix it, or change it. That, too, was part of his path. Rain returned in the late afternoon, this time soft, almost ceremonial. He did not seek shelter. He let it fall, washing over him, soaking again the layers of cloth and skin. His hair plastered to his forehead, his sleeves heavy, but his steps did not falter. That night, he slept beneath a pine tree. Its branches offered little protection, but enough. He wrapped himself in a cloak of straw and stillness. The rain softened into mist again, and somewhere in the distance an owl called, low, mournful, ancient. He listened, then closed his eyes, not for escape, but for rest, for renewal, for silence deeper than dreams. In the morning, he woke not to light, but to birdsong. The storm had passed. The sky, while not bright, was clean. The ground was damp, but no longer flooded, and the road was waiting, as it always was. He stood, tightened the straps on his pack, felt the familiar weight of his swords, checked the flute, touched the stone gifted by the child, looked ahead. Then he walked, and the sound of his steps joined the wind, neither hurried nor slow, only present. In the end, the footsteps grow softer. The roads, once endless, have become familiar. The trees no longer pass in a blur. They bow gently, as if recognizing him. And Musashi is no longer walking toward anything, only within, only through. He has taken residence in a cave near a quiet mountain pass, not far from a village, but far enough that the silence remains uninterrupted. The locals call it Reigando, the Spirit Rock Cave. It is not much, a hollow in the stone, a shelter from wind and rain, a place for sleeping, a place for watching, and for Musashi, a place for writing. There is no sword at his side now, not always. Sometimes it lies across his knees while he sits, other times beside his bed, often untouched. His hands have learned a gentler rhythm, one that holds ink instead of steel. Morning comes not with alarms nor urgency, but with light. The cave opens eastward, and the sun spills across its floor like a silent visitor. Musashi stirs, folds his blanket with care, and steps outside barefoot. The earth is cool, the dew glistens. His breath meets the morning air. He closes his eyes and bows. Not to a person, not to a god, but to the simple act of continuing. He eats simply. Rice, often cooled from the night before, mountain greens, dried fish preserved in salt. Each meal is taken with deliberate slowness. No words, no haste, only awareness. The texture of each bite, the scent of warm rice, the gentle sound of tea being poured. He no longer measures his days by hours or tasks or schedules. Instead, by breath, by the position of the sun, by the way the wind sounds different in each season. One morning, as he kneels before his inkstone, he pauses. The brush hovers just above the paper, and he smiles, not at anything he sees, But at the stillness inside, he realizes there is nothing more to chase. He is no longer the young man seeking duels, nor the wanderer hoping to master his form. He is not even the teacher or the tactician. He is simply here. In these final months, Musashi begins to write what he considers his last offering. Not a boast, not a story, but a guide, a small scroll, brief and sparse, yet filled with depth. He titles it Dokodo, the way of walking alone. 21 precepts. No decoration, no long explanations, just truths distilled from a life lived with eyes open. Accept everything just the way it is. Do not seek pleasure for its own sake. Do not fear death. Respect Buddha and the gods without counting on their help. He writes each line not as commandment, but as offering, a mirror for those who will one day walk their own path. Visitors still come from time to time, a curious boy, a former student, a passing monk who brings herbs and silence. Musashi does not reject them, but he does not entertain them either. He speaks softly, if at all, and when they go, he returns to the stone floor, the ink, the light. He does not miss the world, not the towns, not the temples, not the whispers of fame that once clung to his name like dust to traveling robes. Because the world is still here, in the way a pine tree bends in wind, in the curve of steam rising from tea, in the hush before the first cicada begins its call. He sees it all, hears it all, and it is enough. Some nights he dreams of water, a wide river, shallow at the edges, deep in the middle. He walks along it, never needing to cross, only to follow. He never reaches its end. But in the dream, that feels right. He wakes with the taste of mist in his breath. He writes less as time goes on. Sometimes he simply sits, hours at a time, back straight, breath slow, hands resting in his lap like sleeping birds. Not meditating in any formal way, just being. And in those still moments, it is as if the road continues, inward, no longer traced in mud or dust, but in attention. Musashi begins to feel his body fade, not in pain, but in distance. His legs no longer desire movement. His hands tremble slightly. He does not resist it. He has walked far enough. On one final afternoon, he lays down early. The cave is warm. The wind is kind. His head rests on folded cloth. The scroll, his final writing, lies near, complete. He does not close his eyes. He watches the mouth of the cave. And the sky changes color from silver to gold to a gentle, endless gray. He does not leave behind riches, no shrine, no temple, no lineage, only the path he walked, and the silence that remains. You do not need to swing a sword to follow him. You do not need to master ink or blade or discipline. You only need to listen, to breathe, to walk. And in walking, to slow down enough to see. And so the story fades, not with clamor, not with battle cries, but with stillness, with the hush of mountain mist, with the scent of ink drying on parchment, with the sound of footsteps no longer chasing, but simply walking. Miyamoto Musashi did not seek greatness in the way the world often measures it, not with crowns, not with monuments, not with noise. He walked his path with quiet hands, a blade in one, a brush in the other. And through them both, he carved not just a style, but a way of living. Through the years, he faced many, but perhaps his greatest opponent was the self. And through stillness, through patience, through seasons of solitude and silence, he came to know it. Now, centuries later, there is no need to remember every duel, every journey, or every name. It is enough to remember this, that a life can be both fierce and gentle, that discipline is not about force but awareness, and that sometimes the most profound victories are the quietest ones. Wherever you are now, whether you're listening by candlelight, settling into your bed, or simply closing your eyes for a moment of peace, let the stillness settle around you. Let the footsteps slow. Let the mind soften. And if, like Musashi, you are walking your own path, may it be steady. May it be silent. May it be yours. Good night, and thank you for walking with us.